Bitcoin's price continues to fall like a hot knife through butter, spiking all the way down to $80,000 before making a recovery based on some good news that we will be going over here today. I thought it was the perfect opportunity to make a video explaining where I thought Bitcoin's price could go to both the downside and the upside and the historical data that backs up these price points and what my plan would be if Bitcoin hits these price targets. So stick around, it's going to be a good video. Start with where I could see Bitcoin's price going to the downside first because there's still a lot of fear in the market. And as you can see here, the fear and greed index is showing that over the last month, it's been extreme fear, which is not overly uncommon when we're in bear market territory. And as you can see here, even in the ETF outflows, we had almost $1 billion in ETF outflows just yesterday, and that's mostly retail selling. And there's still a lot of macroeconomic things that could drive this market down lower. There's problems with Japan potentially raising interest rates for the first time in decades. There seems to be a lot of internal conflict with the Fed, which is very strange for that to be made public. And there's a lot of liquidity issues. Retail doesn't have the same money that it had in 2021 when there were 0% interest rates and everybody was getting stimulus checks. So, where do I see Bitcoin's price potentially going to the downside if we continue this downtrend? Well, the first line in the sand for me that's very important is the $74,000 region. And why that is very important is because this was the low from the April tariff crash. If we stay above this line, then technically we are still in an uptrend on the bigger picture. But if we break below this line, then it's confirmed that we are in a downtrend. And the bottom half of this box is from the peak of the last bull market. So if we break down below this line and get into a downtrend, I could see some level of consolidation happening in this line right here in this area before we ultimately fall down a little bit lower. As you can see here, there was some support and resistance happening in this area too. But if we don't if we don't find support here and we fall back through, then I think we could continue to fall down until we eventually find some lows in the market for the bear market. Because if we make a downtrend, then that basically guarantees we would be in the bear market. And where do I see Bitcoin's price going for a low in the bear market? Well, I'm going to look at what happened in the past. When you look at this last peak that happened in the 2017 market and draw a line right over to the bear market of 2022, you can see it almost marked the perfect bottom. So historically, I want to see if that is something that will happen again. So I take this last peak right here and draw it over. And what do we get? We get a line between 48,000 and about 50,000 right here. So what does that mean for Bitcoin? That's about a 62% drop. And if you take the diminishing returns from the previous two bull markets from top to bottom, the 62% actually lines up pretty well, which leads me to believe that this could be the bottom for Bitcoin if we continue in this macro downtrend. If we break through this support area right here, get into a lower low, and don't make any sort of meaningful recovery. Now, I want to give you my opinion on where I think Bitcoin's price will go based on history and what needs to happen for us to have any hope left for a bull market. But first, I want to go over the good news we got today that flipped sentiment in the market. And that was that New York Fed President John Williams signaled he could support a cut when the central bank meets in December. What he said was, I still see room for a further adjustment in the near term to the target range for the federal funds rate to move the stance of policy closer to the range of neutral, indicating he would support a rate cut. In addition, if you guys saw the jobs report, unemployment actually rose from 4.3% to 4.4, which would also support a rate cut, which is why the odds for a rate cut jumped from 39% yesterday all the way up to 71% today. This good news brought Bitcoin's price from $80,000 all the way up to 85,000. Now, where does this mean Bitcoin's price could go from here? Well, first, I want to look at history and what's happened when we've been in this exact same situation before. As you can see here from the 2017 cycle, we came down to retest this 50 weekly moving average, moved above it, crashed down below, came up to retest it, ultimately getting rejected and going into the bear market. Now, in the 2021 market, we came down to retest this 50 weekly moving average, moved above it, crashed down below, came back up to retest it, got rejected, ultimately went into the bear market. Now, we are in this exact same setup that we've been in the last two markets where we came down to test it, we went up, and we got rejected. So my opinion is at some point, whether it's before the weekly close on Sunday or in the future, we will come up to retest this 50 weekly moving average. Now, to save the bull market, I believe this move needs to happen before the second weekly close of the 50 weekly moving average on Sunday. And if we can do that and we can save the bull market, then we can start retesting some of these other resistances around 110 and 116. But we need to flip this 50 weekly moving average from resistance to support. But the question is, what causes us to make a 21% move to the upside? Well, yes, we just did get some good news with the likelihood of a rate cut going up quite a bit on December 10th. But the other bit of information that could help us is the amount of liquidations to the upside. Right now, almost all liquidations to the downside have been wiped out, but we have giant clusters of liquidity that go all the way up to that 50 weekly moving average and even higher, but up to the 50 weekly moving average at 103,000. But I want to be completely honest with you guys, with the sentiment in the market right now, and with a lot of people selling who are 4-year believers, I have a hard time believing a lot of people are going to buy back into the market right now and give Bitcoin the ability to make a 20% move to the upside just to reclaim this 50 weekly moving average. I think it's going to be a very difficult move to make, but it's going to be something that I watch very closely over the next 2 days as we move into Sunday and get that weekly candle close. But if we can do that, like I said, then we can start retesting some of these other resistances around 110 and 116. And if we break 116, then we can see attempts at new all-time highs. But first and most importantly, we need to get a move up to this $103,000 area and find some support at this 50 weekly moving average. And these are my opinions on where the price of Bitcoin could go if it goes down or up. And I have plans based on whatever way it goes. If it continues to go down, I will be buying into those zones that I mentioned earlier. And if it goes up, there's going to be selling points that I have too, based on what the price of Bitcoin does. For example, if we get up to this 50 weekly moving average, I am going to sell some of my coins. If we move above it, then I'll start selling at some of these other points of resistance too, just to be safe, because we can see how quickly this market can turn negative. And that's my plan, and I encourage everybody to have their own plan too going forward.